Sit over here.
Hey, Tom.
Hi, Wendy.
Welcome.
Wow, I'm glad you're still involved. My go-to person for many years. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide a few comments on the issues of interest here this evening. Many of you I know, but for those who don't, Tom Cahir is my name, and I'm the administrator for the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority. And I've been there now for over a decade, actually 14 years. And our mission statement for as long as I've been there is to be a data-driven agency with an emphasis on customer service and doing the best we can to provide accessible, affordable, safe public transit throughout not only Barnstable but across all of Cape Cod. We have 400 square miles that we're responsible for, roughly 400 square miles we're responsible for, 15 communities. And we have different services that we provide. Most notably is our fixed route service that runs hourly into all 15 towns. And here in Barnstable, we have the Villager and the Crosstown fixed route services, as well as the Sandwich Run and H2O that come, Sea Line that come in through Barnstable and have stops as well. So Barnstable is sort of the hub, obviously, of our transit operations. We also have ADA transportation. The for Americans with Disabilities Act was passed back in the 90s, and it's been a good thing, and we provide ADA service for anyone that's eligible. They have a doctor's note saying that they're eligible, and we go through a process and provide transportation for anyone who lives within 3/4 of a mile from any of our fixed routes, which are all 15 towns. We have what is known as dial-a-ride service, or DART, you may have heard of. You call 24 hours ahead of time, schedule a ride. We will come to your home, take you where you need to go. Grocery shopping, healthcare, church services, those kind of things. We try to share rides. We try to group folks together. If they're all going shopping at the same time, it can help us share rides. But it's been a very successful service that we've provided for years, and we average about 600 trips a day on DART, so Cape-wide. We also have a new service, relatively new, called Smart DART. It's an app-based service that the town of Barnstable and Yarmouth have used now for 3 or 4 years. When we originally developed it internally, in-house, we wanted it to be for 15 Cape communities at once, but of course COVID and driver shortages and things prevented us from expanding to the entire Cape, excuse me, when we first developed it. So we placed it into the town of Barnstable and Yarmouth for the last three and a half years. And it's been overwhelmingly successful. You summon one of our vehicles and we come to get you within a half an hour and take you where you need to go. Ideally, they're intended for short trips and not to hurt our fixed route service, to get folks to our fixed route if you want to go on to other destinations. But for instance, in some communities where beach parking is a problem, you can call us, we'll take you down there and come pick you up. All you do is summon us on your app. And you can get all that information on our website, CapeCodRTA.org. So on February 1st, we just, because of the fact that we've now been able to attract more drivers to our service, we have introduced Smart DART to the entire Cape. And we've developed zones. There's 7 different zones on the Cape, and Barnstable being the key. So if you download one of our apps, and there's been 3,500 folks that have downloaded the apps just recently because of our expansion, you can learn more about it and get a ride here in the town by just by summoning us on the app. We also have a Boston Hospital bus. We go to 16 Boston hospitals for 4 days a week. It's $15 one way, $30 round trip. Leaves from Wellfleet, makes 3 or 4 stops on the way to Boston, and very popular service. A lot of folks, even though we have good health care here on the Cape with Cape Cod Healthcare and Falmouth Hospital, there are some folks that feel more comfortable going to Boston or have appointments in Boston. So we've had that service in place for many years. And then, of course, in the summer, we have a trolley here in Barnstable, a free trolley that traverses Main Street and around the area. We have a train. We've introduced a train 10 years ago now, the Cape Flyer, which is a weekend rail service from South Station to Hyannis. And we coordinate with Highline and the steamship, so when the train comes in on Friday night, they can seamlessly transfer onto one of our buses and go right down to the boats and get over to the islands. That's been successful, and we work very closely with Highline and the steamship, and I'll speak more about that further in the presentation here. One of the main issues, and I know that the topic tonight is future and present and future planning needs. One of the big issues, obviously, not only Cape-wide but statewide, is the housing crisis. And I know the governor and the legislature is taking that very seriously and making it a very high priority. And here on the Cape, working with many folks, Lisa over at HAC and others, they've developed strategies in each of the town to address some of the zoning issues so that housing can become more available and affordable for folks. It's a long process, but I'm interested to see how it continues to unfold, and I think it's been working quite well. And the reason I bring that up is because transportation is a very important piece of any new housing development, whether it's big or small. And several years ago, in a previous capacity, I recall seeing all these, with the population growth exploding in the state at the time, I was concerned that they were building all these housing units, but when they were completed, they would say, well, how do we get people in and out of there? So the legislature and others have worked to make sure that the planning process gets done early on, and that transportation's at the table when the planning for the construction occurs. So now we meet with developers occasionally when they're proposing something here on the Cape, and we work on several committees, and we're with the Housing to Protect Cape Cod group that I think Wendy's on that as well, and of course the Cape Cod Commission. So transit and transportation overall is a critical piece to all the housing challenges and needs that we're experiencing around Cape Cod. Another thing that I think we have made a very high priority for several years now at the Cape Cod RTA, and that is, I know that we all recognize that we have an older adult population that exceeds most areas, not only in Massachusetts, but all over the country. We're like the 10th or 11th most densely populated senior county in the country. And so 5 years ago, we decided, because we have a large number of, I think, the next slide speaks to, well, you can't really see the numbers that well, but we went to a free fares for seniors over 60 years of age 5 years ago on Wednesdays. And we've seen our ridership tick up on Wednesdays, so the more folks are going across the Cape in various transportation modes to see the Cape with free fares on our fixed route buses. And so recently, we decided, when we looked at the numbers and read that 40% of Cape Cod's year-round population of 220,000, 40% of it is 60 years of age or older. So we decided to apply for a grant to make free fares for everybody free all the time, 60 and older. 60 and older, yeah. So that's been in place for the last 2 months as well, and we've seen our ridership go up as well. The Go Card, I guess I'm jumping around because I just read this, put it together this afternoon. The Go Card is a new card that we've had. We've had in place for some time what we call the Charlie card, which allows you to get onto our bus, and if you have a reduced fare, or if you're a student or a senior or disabled, Charlie card was what you needed to get on. We have recently developed in-house a more sophisticated card, and we're calling it the Go Card. And long term, we'd like that to become interoperable with all the transportation modes. We have a multimodal committee here on the Cape, and we work regularly with our transportation partners, I already mentioned Highline and Sea Line, but of course, Katie Service and others over at the airport, Cape Air, Plymouth and Brockton, Peter Pan. So we would like to see one day that, while one card can get you, actually ideally from Logan to South Station to Middleborough to Buzzards Bay, onto Cape RTA, onto the steamship, onto Martha's Vineyard. And that's what we're hoping to develop. And I know that's being studied and considered in various places. So I think that's something we should be thinking about in the future. And with that Go Card, we've just recently introduced it. So we work very closely with our councils on aging. And so in order to process, to register for the Go Card, in the last 10 days, we've had 500 people come into our facility to get their picture taken and give us their information. But figuring that Lower and Outer Cape and Upper Cape folks have a long trip to get in here, we're working with the councils on aging to have our senior mobility manager go out there and take the picture and send in the stuff to make it easier. But we're pretty surprised and pleased with the number of folks that have registered for this new card. It's really kind of exciting, and the technology is a wave of the future. The other thing that is that I think is relevant now and certainly going into the future is, in recent years, the transition from fossil fuel vehicles to electric vehicles. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions obviously is important. The statewide average is for transportation contributing to greenhouse gas emissions is about 40%. But here on Cape Cod, it's 55%. So we've been very aggressive in terms of planning to convert from those fossil fuels to electric. We've already had 15 electric vehicles come in that we received through the Mobility Assistance Program. And another issue associated with that is the charging stations necessary, to make these vehicles run. And as you read more and more about EVs and zero-emission vehicles, you hear one of the main concerns expressed from folks is that range anxiety. They don't want to be driving down the road and not know how far they can go, and that's an issue of concern. But we have 20 level 2 charging stations on our site, and at our operations center in Dennis we have 10 more. So we've started to develop these machines that can charge your cars, and I'm also working with some Cape leaders. Last week I met with Dan Wolf and Paul Niedzwiecki and Steve Tupper and others to talk about, because Paul Niedzwiecki indicated, and I'm sure Wendy would know more about this than I, but that people are calling the chamber from all over the country saying, what is the availability of charging infrastructure, because I have an EV and I want to come down to an Airbnb or a hotel or a motel, and what's the status? And it's a real challenge. So Paul indicated that the government is focusing on the Hiltons and the Marriotts and the big hotels across the country, but some of the lodging areas on the Cape aren't getting the priority. So it could have an impact on tourism. So we're working on that as well. I mentioned Katie earlier, Katie Service from over there at the airport and Cape Air folks. They have tried to acquire this grant for a smart microgrid grant. And Katie asked that we get involved because of the ground transportation concerns in the event of a catastrophic event or when we lose power anywhere. We need to be sure that we can keep our services running. And Katie was successful in getting that grant. And so we're co-partners with her on that. We've just now started the process, but it's kind of exciting to know that we're going to be developing that right here in the town of Barnstable over at the airport. We've also worked closely with the Voc School, the Upper Cape Voc, and Cape Tech and Cape Cod Community College to make sure that, curriculum and students in those facilities are getting ready to get high-paying jobs in the electric vehicle world. Like, we're going to need mechanics, we're going to need folks that understand the machinations of the battery needs and things of that nature. So those are all things that we're starting to do now, and those schools are doing a good job trying to prepare youngsters for that role. I think I already mentioned the technology and the multimodal stuff. Oh, thanks. That's Kathy, not me. I can't take credit for that. Some of the things that we're thinking about in futuristic things that we have conversations with MassDOT and others about is, I had a conversation a couple weeks ago about smart traffic management issues that are being considered and used across the country, actually, where transit vehicles get priority, and the developing technology to manipulate the traffic signals so transit vehicles can have, a more efficient means to get through them, moving more people to their final destination. It's real, it's being worked on and used in several cities across the country. And then even longer term is the autonomous vehicle. When I put this down today, my staff laughed and said, they're not going to believe that people are going to be driving around without drivers, but it's very real. It's in 10 or 15 years, they're talking about. Pardon me? Yeah, right. Someone brought that up today. So it's something we need to be considering. And our staff, we meet every Monday morning as a senior staff, and we talk about, and we've done this all the years I've been there, how can we improve? What can we do better? What should we know? What should everyone on the staff know about what we're doing? And it's worked out very well, and that's how these issues come up. And autonomous vehicles is, there's research institutions, I know Stanford and others, Carnegie Mellon, are doing some advanced work on it. So I don't see it happening in the short term, but, it's certainly something that, you should keep in your mind for the future. And then the last thing I wanted to really mention is our innovation over at the RTA, and it isn't me necessarily, it's my wonderful, talented staff, but several years ago, we, at one of our Monday meetings, said, we get a lot of federal funds to help us operate what we want to do. State funds, federal funds, local assessment, and fares. Those are our revenue sources. And we thought to ourselves, we get, about 47% of our resources from the federal government, formula funds. So we have, I don't want to get too technical and confusing, but we have what's called 5307 funds, and it's based on road miles and ridership for the most part, and it translates into resources to our region, Cape Cod. And we asked the question about who gets credit for the ferry miles going to Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard? Who gets credit for that? And then we said, let's pursue that with federal transit. And they had never heard that before. But we really felt that the more we did research on it, we felt that we could certainly justify, that being part of our system, that our region should get those funds to help expand our transportation needs. And for 6 months, we went back and forth with them, and then I asked my friend, Congressman Keating, to help out, and he got involved, and that was 4 or 5 years ago. And as a result of that, we receive, it's called National Transit Data, NTD funds. And we report the numbers every month, and we get money back, resources back. And for the last 5 years, we've got considerably more as a result of the steamship and Highline. We have agreements with them that we share some of those resources, but it still brings them way higher than any other regional transit authority in Massachusetts. So that's allowed us to do some things that others have not been able to do. So we developed a 10-year strategic plan and a 5-year capital plan. And the vast majority of that is the transition from fossil fuel to electric. But there are other items within that document that I would encourage you to look at our website and look at it, which would be consistent with some of the goals that this body here is trying to learn about. So I apologize if I was kind of all over the place, but I put this together today, and so I'm happy to answer any questions, and it's great to see you, and thank you for the great work that you do, protecting the Cape.
Thanks, Tom. I'm sure we have some questions, and I see Asia is chomping at the bit.
Thank you. So as probably the only, I'm not sure if anyone else rides the public transit almost on an everyday basis. I love the fact that you guys are making all of these expansive technologies. You're making buses free for seniors, people over 60, no matter what income. But what about the rest of us working folks who have to get from places after 5 o'clock? Your transit doesn't run after 5 o'clock in most places. So how do people working, I have to take lifts when I go places after 5 o'clock. So that's one thing I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned the Smart Dart, another thing I want to ask about. So before you used to be able to go from one place all the way to your destination. Now you guys limited it to a 10-mile limit for the Smart Dart. I took it yesterday, actually.
Yeah, but we eliminated the 10-mile thing.
Not as of yesterday afternoon, the 10-mile thing was still in effect from Hyannis going to Sandwich. I took it then back from Sandwich. I had to take 2 each way. So I spent, your ride fare is $3, then I have to spend another $3. That's $6. So you're making people to go 13 miles spend $6, but yet you're making transportation free for seniors and you're not having transit after 5 p.m. What are you guys doing to address those kind of problems for the working class?
That's a good question, and it's a timely question, because a month ago, we decided, and we had a meeting yesterday with the state, MassDOT. We developed a committee to look at ways that we can identify gaps in our weekend and evening service, because we don't want to create a service in the evening, late at night, that 2 people are going to ride for a period of time. So we've got a committee to look at a comprehensive look at where those gaps will be filled in. In the summer, we expand all that service anyway, but in the winter, which we're in right now still, some of that is limited. So we can't provide some of the late night service that we.
What about the people that don't work, that get off at 5 p.m., 5:15 p.m., they're forced to take lifts and Ubers, even on your most populous routes. You guys know the one that goes down Independence through the mall always has people on it. So why not expand those specific routes till 6 p.m. at least?
Well,
Because
we do that in the summer, but you're right.
But people that live here year-round don't benefit during the wintertime.
No, I understand it, and that is why we are developing this. We developed this committee with John Kennedy and others on it to look at those kind of gaps.
Do they ride the transit every day? Do you all have people that ride your transit that go to work every day on it?
Some of them do, yeah. But the other question, too, is another good question I wanted to answer. I think it was a Smart Dart. Was it the Smart Dart? Yeah, this is new. I mean, when I said we've expanded from Barnstable and Yarmouth to the whole Cape, I think I said February 1st, but that February 1st was for another service that we provided with more. Right.
You all were doing that you all have been doing that for a few months, going all the way out to Sandwich. And now, then you all put the 10-mile limit on it. And as of yesterday at 4 p.m., there still was that.
No, that's what it was. So 2 Mondays ago at our meeting, I eliminated the 10-mile thing. And instead of February 1st, this is going to start consistent with our spring schedule on, I think it's June 23rd. So there'll be no more 10-mile limit, but the intent of Smart Dart is for smaller trips, shorter trips. So what we've done is develop 7 zones across the Cape. Bourne and Sandwich, Mashpee and Falmouth, Barnstable kind of in its own, and Yarmouth and Dennis come into Barnstable. But that's not going to happen until the June schedule starts, the spring schedule starts. So I don't know if it's on our website yet or not, but that is what I was confused about. That is what's going to happen. There's no more 10-mile limitation, because there was a problem with that. Representative Diggs called me a couple of weeks ago and said a constituent was going somewhere, and after 10 miles, they told them they can't go the 14 miles. I said, what are you talking about? So I called the operations center, and they went and picked up and made sure that ride took place.
I'll make sure that when I try to request one and they tell me that again tomorrow.
Yes.
I'll make sure I mention your name and I'll
Yes.
give your office a call.
Yes, no. And talk to Dennis Foster down there.
Because I will hold you accountable for this.
Well, anyone who knows me knows that I don't make up stuff, so I'm sure you'll get that same answer.
So,
Matter of fact, I encourage you to call them and ask.
okay, yeah, let me just interject. So if we have personal follow-up questions, Tom's really accessible and happy to chat. But I think what we need to pick his brain on is future vision, land use. We're a land use committee, and
But I
we want
think
to try to focus on that.
That was a very valid question.
It was a great
Because that's
feedback.
for the future.
That's-
People need to.
Very
real-time
valid,
use.
And she had raised some good points that are currently being looked at very
I think you could
aggressively.
keep talking is my point.
I had a question.
Okay, yeah, Megan's next. And Amanda, did you have your hand up? And then Katya. Megan, not Amanda, just Megan, and then Katya. And then I'll shut up.
So you mentioned housing. As we're looking at more developments and we're also looking at parking, and some of that parking is going to be limited, are you at the table with developers talking about things like cutouts for public transportation on site?
Yes.
And not just, well, Marston's Mills is part of Barnstable, but is that an ongoing conversation as to how to streamline that public transportation at housing developments and through town?
Yes, it is. I know we're doing it in Dennis, we're doing it in Harwich, cutouts, working with the developers, providing shelters when needed in proximity to the facility. So yes, I mean, it's an important piece, and we're also doing it on state roads with state cutouts as well.
And follow up, is there funding for that, or would you expect to increase funding needs as public transportation needs expand? Because Asia's not wrong, like, public transportation has been woefully inadequate for a long time on
Yeah,
Cape, so
no,
it'd be
no, I
great if we
think-
could expand it.
Thank you for the question, Megan. It's, I will say this, I just mentioned that the windfall that we've been enjoying with federal funds that helps us contribute to those kind of initiatives. But the state legislature has really stepped up too in the last few years, and we've received significantly more state contract assistance, which has allowed us to do some of the things that I mentioned in the presentation. But some of the bigger projects that require a great deal of construction, there are some sort of grant availability from government and MassDOT, others. But it's an important piece of the planning process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
It was Mark, not Amanda, and then Katya, okay.
Thank you. This is just a question about when we're looking at use in different areas and sort of basic needs. I'm unfamiliar with the routes, and do any of the routes allow for passengers to ride and stop at any variety of places of commerce, specifically places like food stores, things that would allow for basic necessities, things like that? Or is that something in the future as we have areas maybe that get a little more dense? Is that some consideration of where we don't have it currently, that they would be able to get to those areas and come back?
No, that's a good question. Thank you, Mark. We have, as I mentioned earlier, we have what is called a DOT service. Usually it's an 18-seat cutaway bus that you call a day before, and if you want to go shopping, our staff down there tries to put folks together if they're going to stop and shop, and set up times that are convenient. So that in dealing with that type of thing, we already have that. But a fixed route service is an hourly service. H2O comes from Harwich to Hyannis, Flex Route from Harwich to Provincetown, Sea Line from Woods Hole to Hyannis, Bourne and Sandwich Runs, Villager Crossroad. So those are hourly services that go by population centers, and those are generally our stops on our route, and you can get our schedule and see where we stop. And most of them all stop in those kind of facilities, and then they're hourly service. So those are the two available transportation modes that I think would be appropriate for that that type of thing.
Yeah, and the curiosity only came as we strive for a walkable downtown core or a walkable city. Is there a kind of a stopgap, as you point out? But thank you for that information. Thank
Well,
you.
you know, let me just expand a little bit. You know, the TDI process that Barnstable has undertaken, you know, Elizabeth, great leadership here in town. And Elizabeth is great. She's on our board, and she's always helping me with stuff. The TDI has been in the works for several years, which many communities, gateway communities across the state, have not taken advantage of. And I know there's been a lot of discussion, and a lot of it involves that end of Main Street. And of course, our facility is right there. So we want to be helpful and provide, you know, whatever's necessary ultimately that makes it better and walkable and easy to access. I know that Mr. Brennan and others have constructed some nice housing there, and, you know, we've dressed up that corner ourselves quite a bit. There's still things like puffer bellies and things that I think need to be addressed in town. But we're working with the town of Barnstable, and we're always as I said, Elizabeth's on our board, and Mark always, Mr. Els always calls us on occasion. So, you know, we're happy to do whatever we can to contribute to those kind of, you know, improvements.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you're done. It's great. It's a necessity, as mentioned before. It's really hard. I would like to ask you how language accessibility, you know, for people who need to use the transportation to call, and do you have that? Would be wonderful if usually most of the, you know, for language they think of is Spanish. The biggest population on the Cape is they speak Portuguese. So Portuguese would be wonderful. And with the Asian mentioned, we have a population that really need year-round here, who really needs transportation. So expand, not just like summertime, but expand. And maybe because people don't know what they have, what the options they are. And we do have people being forced to drive, and you know, just like he crazed by a car, and they don't have like, you know, it's just, so yeah, this is my point, that for year-round people, there is a huge population who really needs.
No, I agree. You know, as long as I've been involved in this business, I've heard about the need for expanded weekend and evening service. And so I always say to my team, you know, let's do that. And we tried some service down in the lower and outer Cape, you know, particularly when J1s were here. And we're finding that, you know, not that we have to be fiscally prudent in our decision-making, and we can't have 35-foot buses, you know, running for hours on end with nobody on them. So that's why I just now put this comprehensive team together to look at the gaps, and we now have the resources to do it. So it won't just be summer. We'd probably be doing it right now, but my team says let's wait till the next. We have 3 different schedules a year at different times, but your point is well taken, that it isn't just the summer that the folks are in need. In terms of, you know, the bilingual opportunity, you can click on our thing, and we have 5 languages that translate the information necessary, and we have a bilingual person at our desk, Mariella, who works at our desk, and she helps us every day, you know, talking.
Does she speak Portuguese?
Yes.
Okay. Haitian Creole?
No, I don't think she speaks that.
Do you all have a person that speaks Haitian Creole? Because that's another language that is spoken significantly here, and I found that community gets absolutely no resources whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, we don't have a very big staff, but we have the ability to translate, but we don't have.
I mean, I feel like there should be someone on your staff that speaks that language as well, so that immigrant population has someone that they can count on. Because I know they go to your place, they go to drop-in center that I work at, health ministry, and they look for resources, and there's nothing really for them. So I just want to make sure that we can expand it so that they have that language availability as well.
I will check on that tomorrow, see what we're doing about it. Thank you.
We're here to pick his brain. Pick it clean.
I'm just curious, what would you identify as kind of your major challenges, that you see happening presently and in the future, and how can the town of Barnstable be supportive and involved in that?
Yeah, I was trying to think of those kind of things all afternoon because I understand that's the objective of having this hearing. We have challenges all the time. I mean, my goal is to provide safe, accessible, affordable, public transit all over Cape Cod. We did 800,000 trips last year, and I want to expand so that it's more accessible. That's why we developed SmartDart in-house. Our IT guy developed that himself before microtransit was a buzz phrase. And it's worked with great success for the most part, but your points are very well taken, and we're going to address it. But, there are challenges. We have some funds now, and we have resources, but we always have to be, we have to concentrate on the funding that we receive, and any new service, the town where that service occurs could be assessed more money. We've never had to raise the assessment from any town since I've been there, more than 2.5%. Which is something I'm very proud of. So the towns have not had to contribute more than anywhere else. So, but Amanda, I'll continue to think about that, and I'll send a note over to you folks about, those type of more specific answers, because I know I'm kind of vague about that.
Katya.
Have you considered to consult the population what they would like to have their needs, like especially the immigrant population, to have something like how to address their needs?
Do you do an annual survey, Tom, or some customer?
We do seat surveys a lot on the buses, and we do periodic inquiries and those kind of things. Yeah.
Are
The
those
language
surveys and
barrier.
language?
As I said, we have you can click on it and get it translated, but I'll learn more tomorrow about, what we can do.
I know this is a statement, but I like just to help, because, people, even I actually speak a little more English today than like a year before. And it still
You've got a lot
have
better.
me like, I feel like, oh my gosh, my heart pumps like, am I expressing myself right? So for people who comes, and we try our best to learn the language, but it's still like a barrier. So like motivating, people want to participate in. So I would love to spread out the survey and find out what the population needs. So, yeah, something like
first
that.
of
I think
all-
would be wonderful.
First of all, you speak very well. And secondly, I will check with Kathy tomorrow, because I know that this is the kind of thing that we like to learn. I don't get calls about it, but I do know we have different populations, so it is a problem, I'm sure. But I don't get when I get a call on something, I address it. But I will bring this up with the team tomorrow and see if we can do a better job, and we'll contact you about that. Okay?
Please do. I
Sue?
love that survey, so I can give it to our communities.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I think we'll have a transportation survey as part of our process anyway. Sue?
Tom, it's nice to see you.
Yeah, I haven't seen you for a long time.
I know. I've noticed that there's been a concern among some people about the lack of parking at some of the larger developments that have been proposed and they're mostly in Hyannis. In your experience, do people's use of the buses, or can people's use of the buses as time goes on justify reducing the need for on-site parking?
I mean, that's the goal. I mean, I think public transportation is supposed to, help address some of those challenges. And, we've had success in improving our ridership, but, it's hard to get people out of their cars. A lot of people just will never let go of that wheel and just want to drive. But we do go to all the big stores we stop are they're on our fixed routes. And we have these other, Dart and Smart Dart now available for people to get there and get back in a reasonably efficient manner.
You go to Village Green and Cromwell Court.
Yeah,
The Village Green is my you pick probably 50 people up
Yeah.
a day there.
yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, I think that is something that, we try to do. And that's why we've developed relationships with developers, and we've developed relationships with the business community. When Wendy was there, she would call us every month about something we had to help her with or to learn more about. And she was so lucky to have her on the Cape, tremendous leader. And when the bridges get done eventually, she's the reason.
So
it
we're going to have a lot of
sounds like-
transit coming over those bridges, right, Tom?
We are.
Yeah.
We are indeed.
So,
It sounds like that you would be responsive to the fact that there might be more people someplace that didn't have a car.
Yes, yeah. Well.
And
we just did-
theoretically, people who were moving into someplace that didn't have tons of parking available would understand that and would have figured out that, yes, we could take the bus where we
And we would
needed
put
to
a
go.
shelter there, and we would put a stop there, and that's what we do. And also, some of you are familiar with environmental justice communities. Well, I'm a member, along with Wendy and others, on the 5Cs, Cape Cod Climate Change Collaborative, dealing with climate-related issues. And we just did a thorough analysis of our entire Cape service and identified, 4 EJ communities and are focusing them as higher priorities. So the folks you want is, affluent or are able to, we're doing that. So we're aware of it. We're always trying to get better. We're not perfect, but we're doing a pretty good job. My team is great.
Well, I'm sorry, one more question, but you mentioned climate change. I know that you're, transitioning to the electric buses. Are there other things that you're finding that you need or want to do?
Well, we got ahead of the electric vehicle, zero-emission vehicle issue before anybody else really did. We hired a company from Pennsylvania called Hatch Associates. They're the foremost leaders in climate-related transportation issues. And they, in 10 months, gave us, 10 deliverables. We did a newsletter every 15th of the month to tell us where we are, guiding us and telling us what we need to be doing. And we completed that in October, and that's why we're so far ahead of everybody else. We've got already 20 electric vehicles. But there are still challenges, the charging infrastructure. I say this all the time, smart people don't even know that, there's level 1, level 2, level 3, the cost, how long the charge takes, There's a lot of things that people are hesitant to buy an expensive electric vehicle, but the greenhouse gas emissions, and here on the Cape with sea level rise and other issues that are climate related, I think we're in good hands. And of course, with the Cape Cod Commission, and I didn't mention Steve Tupper, but Steve Tupper and Christie over there, I mean, they do such a tremendous job, as you know, Sue. You work with them all. But, we're fortunate we have smart thinking people that I think, the Cape is, the Secretary of Transportation said to us last time she was down, she said, if all the transit authorities, were as innovative as you guys are, she said, I could go on vacation for a few months. And I've bragged about that. It isn't just me, it's our great team, but we're doing some things right.
Tom, I have a couple of questions. In terms of because you're absolutely right about EV infrastructure. So who's responsible for building electric vehicle infrastructure is my first question. Then I have a follow-up.
Well, we're working with Eversource. We're working with a lot of companies. We've had 20 charging stations on our site at the Hyannis Transportation Center for 5 years now. So we did it before it was fashionable, and a lot of it came from grants, from federal grants and state grants. The government's really emphasizing the importance of all of this stuff. So we did that when we did our solar array over there too. Remember when we did our solar array, we put, it reduced our energy demand by 92%, 6-7 years ago. So yeah, I mean, we've we just worked with those groups.
So I guess my follow-up question is, has anyone done a forecast of how much infrastructure we need for EVs? I mean, if every car on the road becomes an EV by X year, do we know how much it's going to take?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, look, Dan Wolf called me about a month ago and said, Tom, I don't know if there's enough thought or planning being done about that very issue. Can you pull together some sort of meeting? So I called Steve Tupper, I called Paul Nedzwicki, I called this gentleman, Terry Gallagher. He's on the Assembly of Delegates, and he's kind of been the leader in this effort to try to, he actually proposed a proclamation, and a resolution talking about the importance of charging infrastructure. And then Steve was working with the state and identifying locations across Cape Cod where these stations should be located, because some of our new electric buses, we're going to have en route charging because they can't make it from Provincetown to Hyannis or Hyannis to Woods Hole. So we're going to have to identify areas. We'll switch off buses. It's complicated stuff, and it's all kind of in the infant stages of discussion. But the Cape Cod Commission is doing that kind of work right now.
I think that was it. Did I see another question?
I have another quick.
Okay, Bob.
Just really to follow up on the last couple questions. Tom, you mentioned that there is already in existence a number of these charging stations at various locations. Are these charging stations available for anybody? Like, Joe Blow's driving from A to B needs a charge?
It's a great question, and I'm not an authority on it, but I know that all of the ones I'm aware of are level 2, and they take 5 or 6 hours to charge the whole the battery to go 150, 200 miles. So level 2, level 1 is like when you buy an EV, they have it in your house and you hook it up at night, you have all night, you can charge it. Level 2 is the more common, the ones you see around. And level 3 is an expensive, very expensive apparatus that can give you a quicker charge. But all of the ones you're speaking to, I think, are level 2 at this point. Except there is one, the Tesla, is that what it's called? The Tesla has a different kind of a requirement as opposed to all the other EVs together, like Chevy Bolts and all those others. But Tesla, I think, has and I apologize, I don't really understand that yet, but for the most part, you can get a charge from a level 2 charging from all the cars that are out there.
So just let me follow up on that. So I don't have an electric car, so I don't really know anything about this, but, Joe Blow comes from wherever, his or her charge is down. As I understand it, they could go to one of the existing charging stations, it will be able to get at least some charge off of a machine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on your website or some other website, is it posted where these machines are located so the public could, if they were looking for a charging station, they could go, say, whichever transportation agency, and then they have a map or something to say where they are?
There is an app that Steve showed us last week that shows all the locations on the Cape. There's an app. I don't believe we have that on our website, but I'll check on that as well, because I think it's in development. That meeting just took place last week, and I'm behind the curve on it, but there is an app that you can get that tells you exactly where the stations are on the Cape.
The Chambers.
Yes, the bottom line is making it available to people to know where to look.
Yeah.
Right.
In this case, looking where to look for the app, which has the location of the, the things.
A lot of the cars will tell you, if you have an EV car, it tells you where your next charge is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Asia has a question.
Do you
and then
all
Sharon.
charge the public? I mean, I feel like that's, if people have electric vehicles, shouldn't you all be able to charge them some money so that you all can make money back from it and expand services?
Well, we have, if you pay for parking there, that allows you to use our infrastructure.
Yes, you partially have answered the question I have. I just recently replaced my car, and I did look at the electric cars and decided against it, at least at this stage. However, the question I have is, it's already been acknowledged, and I don't need to convince anybody here, we have a parking issue on the Cape. And with people who have the EV cars, can they, for instance, when we have our valued tourists who come down during the summer. Can they just go and park up overnight, which means other people cannot? Or is there like a time limit and you can be here only for so long? In other words, if they're at the level 2 and it takes like 3 or 4 hours, can they leave it there at 5 o'clock? And in which case they come back at like not 8 o'clock the next morning or 10 o'clock the next morning, or they keep it until after they've been to the beach and everywhere else with
You mean
friends.
at our
Is
site?
there a limit? Yeah.
At our site, we don't have any restrictions, but we have 20 different stands there, and in all the years they've been there, I've never seen more than 4 or 5 there at once, even in the summer. But it's something we need to think about. You're right.
Asia, do you have one more thing? Nope, you're good. Megan?
It may be on your website, and I'd be surprised if it wasn't, but is there some place that marks all the bus stops in town and on the Cape?
Yes, yes,
All
we
right.
have a rider's guide. It's on our website, but we also have rider's guides that we distribute at various locations all over the Cape.
Okay, thank you.
Last chance before we let Tom go. Thanks. I want to thank you, Tom. I know that you've been at this a long time, and you've been a huge champion of transportation in the state for a long time. So as your former state role and on your local and your regional role, I just want to thank you for spending the time with us tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Wendy. It's great to see you all, and I know that some of my answers were kind of all over the place, but I'll follow up with Asia and Katia on those bilingual matters.
It's very,
Pardon
it was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you, Amanda.